Now that the weather is cooler, I thought it'd be so much fun to make a tutorial for my Starlight Beanie pattern. Each hat is a super quick make because we're going to be using size 6 super bulky yarn. And I'll show you how to do my version of an invisible join, and it's simple, easy, and you won't have a big ugly seam on the back of your hat. Overall, the pattern is super simple and even easy to memorize because it's just 3 rows that are repeated. If you do want a copy of the PDF pattern, it's available in my shops, and I'll put it on sale for the rest of 2024 if you wanted a copy for your pattern library. Okay, so let's get started. Here are some of my favorite yarn options to use while making the hat, but you could use any size 6 bulky yarn that you'd like. The Rasta yarn is the softest, fluffiest, nicest hand-dyed wool yarn ever, and that's what I include in my crochet kits for this pattern. But you could find tons of different size 6 yarns at craft stores. Last year Joann's had this Lion brand yarn for like $5 each for Black Friday, and I got tons of them. And most craft stores have like size 6 options for bulky hats. So these are the hat kits I just made from my shop yesterday. I'm gonna pick out a few that I want to make today. I want to make this pink hat for myself, and I love the way this yarn looks, and I really want to see how it works up for the hat. So I'll grab an extra hat kit I have lying around, and I'll show you all the materials you'll need to make a Starlight Beanie. I use about 90 yards of yarn, and I always have some left over. A pom-pom is optional, but it is fun to add. The only thing is make sure you get a good one. This brand is from Joann's, and I think they're really nice quality, and the elastic is long enough to use with the wooden button. Other ones like this one from Amazon, not so much. And here's all the little stuff we'll need too. A yarn needle, a 10mm crochet hook, cute little stitch markers, a wooden pom-pom tag. I'll show you how to use it to put the pom-pom on, and then it's removable. And then this cute little suede tag. It just adds like a little detail that people love. And another tip I have for making the beanies if you want to sell them is go to a craft store and find like a wooden circle like this, because it makes it so easy to take listing pictures for your hats. All you do is throw it on the circle and then the picture looks nice. Okay, now that we've all of our tools and materials gathered, let's make a hat together. Make a magic circle and chain 1 to complete it, and then completely ignore the starting chain. We're gonna act like the starting chain of each row just doesn't even exist. So just pretend it's not there and don't ever work anything in it unless I say so. Okay, so now we got our magic circle. We're gonna make 10 half double crochets into the magic circle, and it's pretty much like a double crochet, only we only pull through once and through all 3 loops on the hook. So you yarn over, pull up a loop, and then pull through all 3. And you're just going to make 10 half double crochets in the magic circle. And something I wanted to mention about this pattern from the start is that you have to let your tension kind of flow and let the hook do the work for you. Don't work your stitches too tight. Never be pulling on the yarn or anything. For this pattern, it's important to kind of be loose with it and let the hook and the yarn just do the work, and don't pull it tight because then you'll have a tiny hat. And you want your hat to be stretchy too. That's why it's made out of half double crochets, and like we'll be working in the back loop a lot and stuff. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how I make an invisible join. You're going to pull up a long loop before taking your hook out of your work and dropping your yarn behind. And we're going to find that starting chain and the first half double crochet. Insert your hook from the back into the top of the first half double crochet and then pull the loop through. And then we just made 2 loops on the front. That's what I put the stitch marker in. And those 2 loops that we just made with the invisible join, they're going to replace the last stitch of each row. So your last stitch should always be worked into the invisible join from the row before. So starting row 2, we're going to chain 2, and then we're going to be working a back loop only half double crochet increase into each stitch. So basically that means working in the back loop only, we're going to make 2 half double crochets in each stitch round before ending with another invisible join. I'll show you how to make an invisible join at the end of each row because it is weird at first, but you'll get the hang of it and then it's super easy. It's basically like making the slip stitch on the inside of the hat so you don't really ever have to see it, instead of on the outside and making like a big ugly seam. now we did it. So let's make the last stitch of the row together in the invisible join from the row before. You see there's kind of 2 loops, and honestly I just like pick one. I don't know, you can experiment and see if it makes a difference, and then I just put the last 2 half double crochets into the back loop of that invisible join, and it replaces the last stitch of the row. And then we're going to do the same thing. Find the first chain and the first half double crochet, drop the yarn you're working behind, insert your hook from the back, and then pull the loop through. And then put the stitch marker there again, so you can pull it a little tight, but you'll never lose it. On to row 3, and we're basically going to continue what we've been doing by chaining 2 to start, and then we're going to do 1 back loop only half double crochet, and then in the next stitch we'll do a back loop only half double crochet increase. So 1 back loop only half double crochet by itself, and then in the next stitch 2 half double crochets in the same back loop together. And you repeat that 10 times, and then we'll be ready to do an invisible join again. At this point we're basically working a big flat circle, so your work should be flat. So take out that stitch marker and then do the same thing we have been doing. To make the last stitch should be an increase, so do 2 half double crochets into the back loop of that invisible join. Pull up a long loop and remove your hook before dropping your yarn and inserting your hook from the back into the first half double crochet and pulling the loop through. Okay, so row 4 we're going to be doing something a little bit different, but it's not that different at all. Chain 2, and then instead of working the back loop we're going to be working in the loop right behind it. Sometimes it's called the 3rd loop, sometimes it's called like the camel stitch, sometimes it's called like back horizontal stitch. Yeah, it's all the same thing. So you find your front loop, back loop, and then there should be a loop right behind that. And it's kind of easy to see if you turn your work towards you and then think about it like a V almost. I feel like this was a really popular stitch like back in the day kind of, and a lot of people who learned how to crochet when they were kids from like their moms or their grandmoms, this was like the 3rd stitch they learned after regular single crochet and front loop, back loop, and then 3rd. Okay, so we're going to be continuing our circle but just making them in the 3rd loop, and it makes this really pretty like raised knit stitch. So go ahead and start by making 2 half double crochets and then a half double crochet increase, all working in the 3rd loop. And I get questions about this a lot, like on my Etsy, from people who buy the pattern, what the difference is. And the difference is do 1 half double crochet in one stitch, in the next stitch you do 1 half double crochet, and then in the next stitch you're going to do a half double crochet increase, so 2 half double crochets together in the same stitch. It is like kind of weird to read on paper. It's hard to explain too, like it's so simple but it's weird to say. I just recorded that like 5 different times. Okay, so we finished the row and the last stitch is weird, and we're gonna have to fake it. Okay, so we have our invisible join marked, but we want this stitch to kind of match with the rest of the stitch, so we want the invisible join to stay how it is and look like another 3rd loop crochet stitch. So we're gonna fake it. Okay, we're gonna work our loop into that like starting chain from the row before, and you can't really tell, see, and you just make your last increase in that starting chain, and then that'll leave the invisible join loop on the top to look like the other stitches, and it kind of blends in. And then make your invisible join for that row. And now we're gonna stop to check the gauge because you want to make sure your hat's gonna fit. And I know like technically you should make a gauge swatch for like any type of wearable, but this is such like a little project. I feel like up to this point is the same as making a gauge swatch, so why not already have your project started? All right. Okay, so basically we're just gonna measure it, and we want it to kind of be like 6.5, even 7 inches is fine if you want it to be a little looser. So just kind of lay it flat and then make sure it's measuring right. If it's too small, that means you're using yarn that's too thin, your hook is too small, or your tension is way too tight. So obviously plushies, like I make a lot of plushies, and you want to be doing the opposite as that. You don't want super tight tension. So you could even use, this is the Line brand yarn, like you could practice with a cheaper yarn to kind of get your tension even and right. That's what I did because I've been making tons of plushies and like my tension is way too tight to be making like a stretchy wearable hat. The next row might seem weird too. It's going to be a star stitch, but it's super pretty and simple. So we're going to start by chaining 4, and what I'm showing you with the yarn needle right now is the stitches we're going to pull up a loop through. So we're going to make 5 different ones. We're going to skip the chain that's on our hook, pull up a loop, and the next 3 chains. And for this stitch, you want to make sure you're making it the height of a double crochet. And then working in the back loop only, pull up a loop for the next 2 stitches. And keeping it the height of a double crochet, pull through all 6 loops on your hook, and then chain. So that's how we made the first star. We're going to make 19 more stars in a little bit of a different way. So we don't have the starting chain anymore, so our first loop is going to be pulled up through the chain 1 from the star before, and then we're going to pull up a loop through the middle of the star, and then in the back loop of the next 2 stitches. And you see, that was even a little too tight. I was trying to pull it up to be the height of a double crochet because this is a tall stitch. We want all those loops to look really nice and even. We don't want it to be like tight and little and a different tension than the rest of the hat. So for the next 18 star stitches, we're going to do the same thing. Insert your hook into the chain 1, pull up a loop into the middle of the star, pull up a loop at the base of the star, and the back loop only the next 2 stitches, and then pull through all of them and chain 1, and keep going with that same repeat. And I try and just like keep my hook horizontal with my work each time I pull it up, because when I first set out to design this hat, I knew I wanted to use a star stitch because it's like the prettiest stitch ever, especially with like this really nice yarn. And I found a stitch in my book and like tried to make it, and it was so tiny and horrible. I could barely pull through like all 6 loops because I wasn't pulling it up to the height of a double crochet. So don't make the same mistake and just like pull it up and let it be loose and flow. And I know as crocheters we're taught like there shouldn't be holes in your work and you should be nervous about your tension being too loose and stuff, but it's definitely not the case for this hat at all. Yeah, you want your hat to be stretchy, and if you're realistic about it, it's like super bulky yarn. You don't want your stitches to be tight or else it'd be really stiff and wouldn't be fun to wear. So for the last star stitch, we're going to be doing the same thing that we have been doing, only our last stitch is going to be worked into that invisible join. And again, this is like a funny way to join. I ignore that starting chain and I go into the top of the first star. And with this one, you can pull it like really tight if you want to. You're not going to get rid of that space because it is a really tall stitch, but I'll show you how to fix that later on, so don't worry about it. And then in the next row, it's really easy, simple row. We're going to chain 2 to get to the height that we want to be at, and basically just make 2 half double crochets in each one of the star centers. So that chain 1 we use to like join all the loops together, we're going to put 2 half double crochets into each one of them. And I really like doing it this way because it kind of like continues the star and makes it even bigger. So yeah, just kind of chill out now that you've conquered the star stitch. You can have an easy row and just do 2 half double crochets in each. To finish this row, you can remove the stitch marker, and we're not going to be working in that invisible join because we were just working in the center of the star. So just ignore it and then do your invisible join around the first half double crochet of the row. And look how pretty it is. I love it so much. I designed this hat last year and gave it to my family for Christmas and stuff, and everyone loved it. And I even sold them at my spring market and people bought them. I was surprised because like who buys a winter hat in spring when everyone's like pretending it's summer already? but people really like it. And this is the side with the join, and I feel like it's not even that bad. Like, I can still kind of tell because I'm looking for it, but if you didn't know what to look for, I don't think you'd really be able to find it if you didn't know. Alright, so from here on out, it's super easy. You already know everything you need to know to finish the hat. So for row 7, all we're going to do is half double crochet in the 3rd loop around. It should be easy to put your hook in there and you shouldn't be like fighting anything. And as you're working around, it just comes as like second nature. It's not too hard. And it's a really fun stitch to use with hats and like really nice yarn because it almost looks like a knit stitch. So we're going to do that weird last stitch again into the top of the chain 2 from the row before. And we're just going to do one. We're not like increasing at all on this row. So do your invisible join, move your stitch marker. And then from here on out, we're basically going to be repeating rows 5 to 7. So row 5 was the first portion of the star stitch, pulling up the 5 loops and then pulling through all 6 and chaining 1 and doing it over and over again. And then the row after is the 2 half double crochets in the center of each star, and then a half double crochet in the 3rd loop around. So that's why I said it's really easy. We already know everything we need to know. And I'll show you how to do each row quickly. So for row 8 is the first portion of the star stitch. We're going to chain 4 and then make our first star in that chain and the back loop only of the next 2 stitches. And then once we have 6 loops on our hook, we're going to pull through and chain 1. And then for the next 19 stars, we're basically going to do the same thing. Our first loop is through the chain 1, a loop through the middle, a loop through the base, and then a loop through the back loop only of the next 2. And the whole time we're going to be pulling them up to the height of a double crochet and keeping our tension kind of loose. And then when we go to make the last star stitch, the last loop we pull up is going to be through the invisible join from the row before. We can pull through all 6 loops on our hook, chain 1, and then do that funny join into the top of the first star. And we can really pull it tight because remember the row after this, we're not going to be working in that invisible join at all. So for row 9, we're going to chain 2 to start and go around and just work 2 half double crochets in each one of the chain 1 centers of the star to kind of continue the star out. And then making our last 2 and the last star and just a regular invisible join. And then for row 10, you're just going to be doing half double crochets around, working in that 3rd loop right behind the back loop. And just making 1 half double crochet in each stitch around. And at this point I kind of like use my other hand to help finish the stitch because I don't really want to be pulling it super tight or like yanking it to get all the way through. And then we're going to be doing a funny join because we want to keep the surface of the crochet looking like, oops. We want to keep the surface of the crochet looking like the rest of the 3rd loops around. We do our invisible join. And now I'm going to give you an option about what to do. Because last year when I made my husband one of these hats, his only criticism was that he felt like it wasn't long enough for him. So when I went to go make this video, I thought I should add an option to make a slightly longer hat. I like the original version of the hat. It sits like right above my eyebrows pretty comfortably. But with this longer version, it goes like under my eyebrows and I don't really like it. But if you want to slouch your hat, or if you're making this for like a larger man maybe, you want to make it a little bigger, and you're just gonna do a back loop only, half double crochet around. It's super simple and easy, and it doesn't affect the pattern at all. I mean, we're not adding or taking away stitches. So yeah, if you don't want to make a longer hat, just completely skip that row. And now for the next row, we're going to be doing a slight decrease because we don't want the end of the hat to like flare out when we're putting it on and off and wearing it all through the winter, and just like the hat's gonna like stretch and adjust to our head obviously, but we don't want the brim of the hat to get messed up. So we're gonna do a slight decrease. And to do that, we want to keep working the back loop just to keep it stretchy and like to have a cute little pattern on it. But work in the back loop and do 8 single crochets, and then we're gonna do a decrease. And it's not like the regular invisible decrease I do with the plushies, because we want it to match the rest of the back loop stitches. We're just going to pull up the back loop only from 2 stitches, and then we're going to finish our single crochet. So we're going to turn those 2 stitches into 1. And this will just make the hat like curve in a little and just fit your head better. And then just repeat that 8 single crochets and then a decrease. I guess a back loop only decrease, the opposite of an invisible decrease. And the last stitch should be using that loop from the invisible join. So take out your stitch marker, make your last decrease, and then I'm going to give you another option. So you can slip stitch and chain 1 and keep working row by row like we have for the whole hat. But at this point I'm kind of like tired of doing it. Just me personally. And we're just making the brim of the hat now. It's just back loop only single crochets. So you can just work in the round. So you don't have to join or do anything. You can go around and do just 1 single crochet in the back loop of each stitch until you make a brim that you like. I usually go around 1 time, but you can go around more if you wanted to and make like a longer style brim. It looks cute. To finish off the hat, I do 2 slip stitches just to like blend it in. And then before you go and cut your end really short thingy, we're going to weave it into the bottom. Make it really long, like 1.5 times the height of the hat. Because like I told you earlier, we're using bulky yarn and tall stitches. There's going to be a gap no matter what we do where we join it. And the invisible join did most of the work for us. Like you can hardly see it already. We can use our end to fix it completely. So I just weave in the end to kind of join a little, turn the hat inside out, just crisscross sew up the hat all the way up the join, and you'll be able to find it. But I'm always careful not to be going all the way through the hat, just kind of working like on the back stitches on the inside. And this will close up all those holes, especially where the star stitch was. You can go back and forth a few times and just get it looking nice and all even and together. And the other reason I like to do this is because when you sell hats to people like at markets and stuff, most people are not aware that you probably shouldn't throw something like Handmade into the washer. So they're probably going to get put in the washer and dryer. So this way your ends will never come loose, your hat will never unravel. So we got it all the way up to meet with our starting end. Tie the starting end with the finishing end together and then hide it in the magic circle. And it's never coming out. Now for adding the pom-pom. If your pom-pom is all squished and kind of like sad looking, you can shake it out, or you could also use a hair dryer like on a low setting, and that kind of like softens the plastic fiber and makes it nice again. And I just pull through the elastic, and then I use this wooden pom-pom button. You kind of just weave it through and then loop it around the base. And if you do have an issue where your elastic isn't long enough, it's okay. You can always just tie a piece of like yarn, or I would personally use like cotton worsted weight yarn because it wouldn't really stretch out and you'd never be able to break it. And you could just tie that onto the elastic and then tie that in a nice little bow on the inside onto the wooden button. And these are really nice. I'll put the name in the description of the Etsy shop I get them from, and these little tags too. I get them both from like different small businesses on Etsy. So I always like to pick a tag that has like the same color tone as the hat, and kind of matching it with the pom-pom is usually cute. And then you just screw together the little metal, I don't know, rivet thing. And that's removable too. So if someone does throw it in the wash, maybe they'll take off the pom-pom and tag first. Okay, so here's the extended long version versus the normal version. I'm gonna go hang out with my family for dinner and make the other ones. Poof, here it is the next day. I love this color so much, and I'm glad I didn't do it for the tutorial because you kind of can't see the stitches. I hope you guys loved the video and you make tons of these hats for your winter markets. I wanted to take a second to thank all my Patreon members because this video and all my work wouldn't be possible without you guys. And I really appreciate all the feedback they give me on my work. And we started to build like a fun community where we all support each other. I even made like a community chat where we can share our profiles and our recent patterns and stuff like that. So it's really cool. And also I just added like, I don't know, 15 hat kits to my shop, but it's the last I'm gonna make, at least for this season, because I'm moving really far away and I don't want to have to lug like 50 pounds of wool yarn with me. So this is the last like hat kit batch for the season until I get to my new house. I hope you guys loved the video, and if you want sneak peeks of what's to come or behind the scenes shots or even to join the community chat, you can always check out my Patreon. We're called the Crafty Cat Collective and we're all really nice. Alright. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Bye.